right, welcome back. So today we are going to be talking about modules and higher order functions along with advanced array methods. So to start, we'll go over some modules. The modules are clusters of code that help with maintaining, namescaping, and reusability of JavaScript code. They are used to lessen dependencies, allowing it to grow and improve independently. Since global variables should not be shared between unrelated code, modules allow developers to avoid namespace pollution by creating a space for private variables. Finally, modules help with the allowance of reusing code across projects. To go over a couple modules, we'll start with module patterns. Module patterns are used to mimic the concept of classes that are used in languages such as Java. This allows developers to store both public and private methods and variables inside a single object. It also enables the creation of public-facing APIs for methods while still encapsulating private variables and methods. So the first type of module pattern we're going to go over is anonymous closure. An anonymous function has its own evaluation closure and then immediately evaluates it. By using an anonymous function, developers can use local variables within the function without overwriting global variables. These functions also have access to global variables, as I will show over here in our REPL. To start, we will have a function, and then we'll have our little curly braces. We will create a variable called student grades. We will have that set equal to an array of 90, 80, and 70. Then below, we will create another variable called student pass fail. We'll have that equal to a function. And then here we will have a var total equal to student grades dot reduce. And we will call another function accumulator, an item, and then in here we will return the accumulator plus the item, and then comma, whoops. Comma 0. And then outside of there, we will write an if statement. So if the total is greater than 70, then we will return that the student has passed with an average score, and then we will call the total, and then we will divide that by student grades dot length, and then we will add a percentage sign for the end of the sentence. And then if we copy this, hit return, then we can write our else. The student has failed with an average of student grades dot length, or total divided by student grades dot length. So then outside of this else statement and outside of the function, we will do a console.log. Then we will have student pass fail. And then outside of here, we also need to add another braces, and then we'll run it, and you will get the student has passed with an average of 80%. The next type of module pattern we're going to go over is object interface. By using object interface, developers can decide which variables and methods to keep private and which ones they want to expose by placing them in return statements. So if we wanted to work off of the student grades that we already have, we would go in here and create a variable, student pass, fail, and have that set equal to this function. And then within here, underneath of our student grades, we would create a return. And then we would say a did pass, fail. And then we would create a function. And in here, we would do our var total, so we'd bring this up. And then we would bring our if statement up as well. And that means we can then remove this function call. And instead of using the console.log, outside of all of this, we would do a student pass fail dot did pass fail to check if they did pass or fail. And if we hit run, you would still receive student has passed with an average of 80%. The final module pattern we're going to go over is revealing module pattern. The revealing module pattern approach is very similar to the object interface approach. However, when using the revealing module pattern, all the methods and variables are kept private until explicitly exposed. So if we go back to our student pass fail, we will keep this variable student pass fail and the variable student grades, but then below here we will do a variable did pass fail, and we will have that set to a function. And then within here we will move our variable total up here. And then we will also move our if-else statement into this function up here, which means we can then remove this return statement. Let's see. And then outside of the did pass fail variable, we will then return the did pass fail colon did pass fail, which then reveals the public pointers to the private functions. So if we run this now, you will still receive student has passed with an average of 80%. For the second part of this video, we're going to go over higher order functions and advanced array methods. So to start, we're going to go over the higher order functions. These are functions that operate on other functions by taking them as arguments or by returning them. These functions allow developers to abstract over actions and variables. So if we wanted, we could create a function that creates a new function. So for example, we could create function less than, we'll say A. And then we will return B if B is less than A. And then out here, we will say let less than 5 equal less than 5. And then in the console, we will print less than 5, and then we will check to see if the number 15 is less than 5. So when we run this, you will receive a false because 15 is greater than the 5 that we brought up here. We could also do a function that changes another function. So to do that, we will clear this. We will create a function student pass fail. We'll do an F in there. And then we will return grades. And then in here we will have a console.log, and then we will say grades, comma grades. And then we will do a variable result is equal to grades. and then we will print grades, and then we will find the highest grade, and then we will print the result. And then below we will say student pass fail, and then we will use the math command and we will find the max grade that that student received. And the student had grades of 95, 80, and 99. So when we run this, it'll show all of the grades that the student received, and then it'll show the grades that the student received again, as we had over here in this console, and then it printed that the highest grade was a 99. And then the final higher order function we're going to go over is summarizing with reduce. By using reduce, you can take an array and return a single value. So for this example, we will create a function, reduce, array, combine, and then start. Then within here, we will create another variable called let current equal start. And then we will create a for loop. We will say let element of array, and then current is set equal to combine current and element. And then outside of the for loop, we will then return the current value. So then out here, if we called a console.log, we would say reduce, and within our array, we will have 5, 10, and 15. And then we will say a comma b, and then we will have that is equal to a times b, and we're going to have it start at 1, because if you have it start at 0 and you multiply a times b, you'll always receive 0, because anything multiplied by 0 is equal to 0. So we're going to have the start at 1. And if we run this, oops, an extra bracket. So if we run this, you'll receive 750. Finally, we're going to go over some advanced array methods. The first one we're going to go over is the find keyword. So find is used to find specific elements within a given array, and it returns the first item that passes the test. So for example, if I did a var my array and set it equal to 5, 10, 15, and 20, let's say I want to find the number 20. I would say my array dot find, and then we will say my num is equal to my num, and we'll have it set 3 equal signs to 20. So we want to find the number 20, and we will run it. And because 20 is in the array, then it'll return 20. The find index method returns the index of the first element that passes the test. If no element passes the test, then it returns a -1. So if we go back up in here and we say find index, and we run it, it says that it's at the index of 3. However, if I copy this and say that I want to find the number 50, and I run it, it gives a -1 because we do not have the number 50 within our array. So let's clear this. We'll keep our array for the next couple examples. The for each method executes a function once for each element within the array. So if I called my array dot for each, and then I wanted to set element is equal to a console.log, and then element. So this will print each of the items that is displayed within the array. So when we run it, we see 5, 10, 15, 20, which are the elements within the array. The map method takes a function to run on every item in a given array. It then returns a modified copy of that array. So if we remove this, and we will say function, say multiply by 5, and we will give it a value. And then within here, we will say return the value times 5. So we're going to multiply each value by 5. Then we will create a function map, and then it will take in our array, and then f. And so we will create a variable let new array equal an empty array. And then we will create a for loop. We will say let I equal 0. Oops. And then I is less than array dot length. And then we want to say increment it by 1. Then in here we will say let the old array item equal to array I, and then we'll let the new array item equal f old array item. And then we need to set the new array I set equal to the new array item. And then after the for loop, we will return the new array. Then outside of that function, we can call the console.log. And we'll say my array, which will return the original array. And then if we do my array dot map, and then we'll say multiply by 5, it'll then return our new array. So let's run this. And you will see that the numbers from the original array are multiplied by 5, and then it gives us a new array. So for these next two examples, I'm going to return back to the HTML that we had created in the previous video. So the flat method creates a new array with all of the sub-array elements that are concatenated into it. So if we recreate our variable myArray, that was equal to 5, 10, 15, and 20. And then let's say we decide that we want to put this within another set of braces. Oops. We'll close that. And then if we use the document .get element by ID, and in here we called it IT354. We will then use the inner HTML to display myArray.flat. So if we save these changes, we can go here, and it'll display each individual item instead of having the array within the array. So if we wanted to change this a little bit more, a flat map is a method that maps each element using a mapping function, and then it flattens the result into a new array. So if we go back to our array and we'll remove these square brackets, and then we'll say, we'll keep the document.getElement, and instead of myArray.flat, we'll say myArray.flat map And then we will say x is equal to x times 5. So we're going to multiply each item by 5. So if we save these changes, then refresh, each of the numbers that we had were then multiplied by 5 and given a new array. Okay, now we're back into REPL. And the next one we're going to go over is filter. So this method creates a new array with all the elements that pass the test given by the provided function. So we're going to keep our myArray, and then we're going to remove all of this. And we're going to say variable filtered array is equal to myArray dot filter, and then we'll say mynum is equal to mynum as long as those numbers are greater than the number 14. So if we then run console.log, we'll say our filtered array, and we run it, we will receive 15 and 20 because they are greater than the my number of 14. The sort method sorts all of the elements of an array in place and then returns the sorted array. By default, the array is sorted in ascending order. So if I remove this and I call the myArray.sort and we run it, it gives the numbers in numerical order. And because 10 and 15 start with ones, they automatically go first. And because 5 doesn't have a 0 in front of it, the 5 is placed last. So the next method we're going to go over is the push method. This method adds one or more elements to the end of the given array. So if I go in here, I put some more space in, I will say var new item is equal to myArray dot push, and I want to add the number 25. So then if I console log, new item, the new item, it'll print the number 5. And then if I console log my array, it'll give the new array. So if we run this, we'll see that new item shows the number 5. And then when we printed the array, it gave the new array values of 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25. Now we can use the unshift method, which adds one or more elements to the beginning of an array as well. So if we change the push to unshift 25, and we run console log new item and the console log my array, and we run it, you will see that the new item is still 5, and then the 25 will be added to the beginning instead of the end. The shift method removes the first element from a given array and then returns the element that it removed. So if I then say myArray.shift and then remove this 25, and we will call this remove instead of new item, and then we'll print the removed item, and then we'll print the updated array. We'll run this. So it removed the number 5, and then our new array is now 10, 15, and 20. Finally, the pop method removes the last element from a given array and then returns the element that was removed. So all we would have to do is change shift to pop, and then if we run it, it shows that it removed 20 from our original array, and the new array is now 5, 10, and 15.